Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Many of you know me as a person who is super obsessed about figuring out what is the best platform, what's the best skip tracing, what is the best way to do something in real estate, wholesale, and in investing. And I'm super excited to announce you that there is a potential dialer that's going to be disrupting the industry. So today I got a chance to sit down with the CEO of Smarter Contact as they have just rolled out a new dialer. A dialer that supposedly is going to be great for everyone like you and me who's doing off-market leads, who's talking to buyers, who's talking to sellers. And there's a lot of features that they did that are super helpful. We're going to talk about those today. But one quick thing, I'm going to give away 1 month free to everyone who uses the promo code Ralph. That's going to be down in the top pinned comment below. It's also going to be right here on the screen. You sign up with my link, you use the promo code Ralph, and you can actually get 1 month off the 3-month plan, right? So you get $200 off for dialer. The cool thing is, during this conversation, Josh said not only you can use this for the dialer, but you can use $200 off if you use that promo code, even for texting. How awesome is that, right? That's so great. I'm so excited to provide you this opportunity. Please watch this video. Ask me any questions you have. I think we had a great conversation. So closer to the end of the video, I'm actually going to show you guys how to use this promo code in order to get that $200 off. So without further ado, let's hop right into the video.
All right, Josh. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking your time to actually talk to me as a person that have been using Smarter Contact for since 2021, for almost 4 years at this point. It's really cool to see you guys do progress, and I really appreciate you. And as I mentioned to my viewers, you are the CEO of Smarter Contact, so we're very pleased to have you on the channel. So I do appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, a lot has happened since 2021, so I'm excited to talk about some of the new developments we have going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously the biggest thing that happened in the last, couple of month or so is the dialer, right? And we're very excited to kind of see where you guys taking this, how people can take advantage of using your dialer. Would love to talk to you about more about that. I think that is, with these softwares, I think there is competition out there, but whenever someone new comes into play, because obviously you guys are not new in the, off-market marketing or just in general marketing, but to be able to disrupt the dialer industry is exciting. I think that competition is important. So when you guys come in, I think everyone wins, and the most important, the customer wins, right? So you guys bring something new to the industry. So
absolutely. Look, since 2019, we've really built something that's tailor-made for real estate professionals. And so what we do is really just based on the collective feedback of the people that use the product on a day-to-day basis. And we just noticed that there was a lot of people that were integrated to other third-party solutions to do the calling campaigns, and it was just a natural progression for us to add this as part of our product. You've been early with us enough to know that, we started off in 2019 and we started as a texting platform. And then with time, we integrated some voice capabilities, the ability to call people from the same phone number that you're being texted from. Today there are direct competitors of ours that don't even have that in place. We've had it for years. And so we just always known that texting is really an invitation to a conversation, and then the phone call is where deals are actually closed, right? So the more that we can enable people to seamlessly have that transition from a text conversation into a phone conversation, the more likely people are to get these deals under contract, right? To get these meetings scheduled, and subsequently, get these deals to the closing table and get paid at the close of escrow.
For sure. And, I teach my VAs to always, I'm like, texting is great, right? Texting is good for the first touch, but the moment you have the chance to get them on the phone call, that's what you have to do. And that's actually a big differentiator with Smarter Contact compared to other platforms. Like you said, the ability to call from the same number you just texted from, instead of having to go to like Google Voice or go into another phone provider to call them, it confuses the seller, right? Like, why are you calling me from a different number, which you just texted me for a different number, right? It's confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and there's a lot of people in the industry as well, particularly real estate wholesalers. They do this virtually. They don't necessarily market to the same market that their boots on the ground that they live in. And so, I mean, I just had a gentleman that's like, hey, like, I'm out in Israel. Can I, but I do virtual wholesaling. Can I use smarter contact? And can I take calls, from Israel? And the answer is yes, right? And so the way it works is, you get into the software, you buy the business phone numbers that you want associated with your business, particularly to the market, like with the specific area codes in the market that you're in. And then from there, I mean, like you can really from anywhere, as long as you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can make those outbound calls and incoming calls from the platform itself. And we do have a synchronous experience from the web app and the mobile app as well. So I know that's a big one, like if you're out like looking at properties, right? If you kind of have that setup, if you're a realtor or an investor, whatever that might be, like wherever you are, you can just you can download the mobile app. There's no additional costs for that. As long as you have a smarter contact subscription, you're going to be able to get those incoming calls and incoming messages. And then, like you mentioned, it really is a seamless communication experience with the end recipient, because they know that you're calling them from the same phone number that you've been texting them. So there's a natural association, and they're not only it's more probable that they will actually respond to your phone call, but there's actually a precedence that's been set, right? That you can go back and refer to what is the conversation your colleague had with this particular person. You increase that level of relevancy, so the conversation.
For sure, and that is great. I think that the ability that Smarter Contact provides you, and I think it sounds like the progression to do a dialer was just a natural progression. It was supposed to happen. I feel like for some time, I feel like you guys have been going towards that direction, and it was just a matter of time when this happened. So it makes perfect sense why you guys did that. And I think I've looked into it. I saw some introduction to how it looks, right? The internal setup, etc. And I think one of the coolest things that is that there's not a lot of options out there for a platform that provides both options for you, right? When it comes to texting and cold calling, right? I think that there are platforms that do one thing or the other. And as a wholesaler, as a person that runs a team, right? The more platforms you got to manage, the more things you got to make sure that the KPIs here and everything is looking good, the more work you have to do, right? So if you can combine those two together, I'm saving myself time. And as you know, time is money. So, and it makes perfect sense. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more with you. Like, how do you see Smarter Contact being 2-in-1 platform, especially when it comes to the marketing, right? How that benefits the user, in what ways?
Yeah, I mean, so like you mentioned, there's a lot of different companies that perhaps do this. I mean, we've always built something, like I mentioned earlier, that is tailor made for real estate professionals. So that's the one thing. It's like we understand the use case, from having been in the industry since 2019, right? And today, having had thousands, tens of thousands of people, over time, like use our software. We know what works. We know what people want. We built something to tailor made for that specific need. So that's the first thing. And then number two is like, there's other solutions out there that might do texting really well or calling very well, but to have a seamless integrated experience between the two, there isn't solutions out there. And if they are, they don't work kind of like under the same dashboard, which is like what we want is to really bring in the text and voice experience simplified, unified in one simple dashboard, right? So we are still using the same user interface that is friendly, that is intuitive, that people know and love, right? Using the same elements of that, the same things that people love, and like in the campaign creation process, you can see the flow of that is very, very similar, right? So it's not something that's foreign to people. And that's important because particularly when you have a large team of multiple VAs that manage accounts, maybe like you have 6 different accounts, right? 6 different dashboard experiences. There's no like training that's required, right? Because it's like they've already been trained on the platform per se, and so that makes adopting our dialer specifically very easy if you've already used our texting solution. And so, the idea of an all-in-one dashboard is not just like that, everything exists in one place. But when you take into consideration the opportunity cost of like being able to better manage your list, better manage your contacts, better able to manage how you label your contacts, how you segment your audiences, how you go about doing campaigns. Like, for example, we always suggest that, look, from a scalability standpoint, doing texting campaigns is going to make a lot of sense, right? Like typically it's kind of like a 10x type of return on how many people you can actually reach out to at the same time, right? So like the time that it takes to make 1,000 calls, you could be sending 10,000 text messages, for example, right?
Yeah.
So you always lead to doing those texting campaigns which is our core flagship product. But then what happens thereafter, right? You can run an entire campaign, maybe like it's a 3-step sequence where you do a text, ringless voicemail over the series of 3 days at different times. But then you still end up with perhaps like, say, a 25% response rate on average, right? Now you have 75% of people that never responded. And so you move those people on to, with one click, the ability to move everybody who didn't respond to your texting campaign onto a calling campaign, right? Without having to think about like exporting lists, re-uploading lists, reassigning those lists to somebody else, like segmenting lists, making exclusions, all these different complexities is like one click, push that list, of people who didn't respond to your texting campaign onto a calling campaign, and it makes it a lot more effective.
Awesome, because I think that is one of the things that I'm seeing. A lot of times when I skip trace a list, it's uploaded to texting and cold calling at the same time, right? But I am paying for the time for my VAs to do both, right? If I can vet the list through texting, like you said, it's going to take a lot faster for me to go to 10,000 properties with texting than it is with cold calling, right? And with that 10,000, let's just say I get 20% response rate, right? So let's say I get 20 to whatever it is, right? So let's say I get 2,000 people that are responded and I just position them as motivated, not motivated, whatever that stuff. Now I only have an 8,000 list that my cold calling VA needs to go through instead of having to go through that 10,000 again, right? So we're saving a lot of time. And that 10,000 is just a list that we go through in like 2 weeks, so, or whatever it is, right? So if you add that up, that adds up to a lot of time that your VA doesn't have to waste, or you personally, right? So if people do it in themselves, they don't have to waste time, right? So that's awesome. So that's a really good thing.
Speaking about, like, you mentioned skip tracing, right? Like one of the things that like it really baffles me when I talk to people is like they're willing to spend, say 10 cents a hit, to skip trace a record, but then they just want to text them one time and that's it, right? We have drip campaigns integrated into our system. The money's in the follow-up, guys. I mean, like if you do the follow-ups, then you're more likely to establish that connection with somebody, especially if they're in dire need, right? Maybe it's a pre-probate, pre-foreclosure type of situation, right? Where time is of the essence to get in front of people. And also when you're skip tracing those contacts, when you do it through Smarter Contact, you're going to have the ability to split mobile phone numbers and landline phone numbers. Now that's very important because we're not only identifying the phone numbers associated with those properties and validating those phone numbers, making sure that they're in fact in service, right? We're also splitting that data into landline and mobile phone numbers. So they really, like, having calling campaigns integrated in one place, it really allows you to maximize the value of that list that you've already paid to skip trace, right? So now you can push all the mobile contacts that have been verified onto a texting campaign and then do all the landlines to the calling campaigns.
And that's awesome. I think that is, like you said, money's in the follow-up. I actually am under contract right now with a land here in Florida that I've been following up with a guy for 2 years. So that is probably the longest follow-up I've ever done, right? So I've done definitely a lot that's 6 months, 8 months, right? A lot of those. 2 years is the longest I've ever done. But it's definitely in the follow-up, 100%. I mean, if and I think what's really cool about Smarter Contact is the drip campaign, and in general the ability to follow up. I think it's very easily done. And like you said, you have these numbers, right? You're kind of like following up from the same numbers, because there's some other platforms that, first of all, the biggest thing that Smarter Contact does right, and I love, is that not limiting you on the markets, right? So I think the ability not to limit you on what markets you work in. Right now, for example, I'm in Florida, but I'm expanding to a different state, and I don't gotta like think about it too much and, be like, oh, well, do I have the budget to buy, a separate thing and whatever it is, I just go and I buy a number in that market and then that's it. And that's that marketing, right? And what's really cool is that I recently found out personally, I had never used it before. For the first time, I started using it like a couple of weeks ago. I started figuring out that you guys have sub accounts of the certain, subscription models, right? So I've created sub accounts for different markets and that has been absolutely awesome. So the ability, like you said, I think you guys tailor the product and you guys have tailored the texting towards investors and real estate wholesalers and all of that. I'm very confident that the dialer will be very similar because there's a track record of what you guys have done.
Yeah. And look, it works for the solopreneur that's starting off, but it also works for people that have large operations, like,
Sure.
You're able to scale, with time. Sure. Like you start with one primary account and then, but underneath it, like you mentioned, you can create up to, 5 different sub accounts, right? And for the first 2, if you're on the right plan, there's no additional charge to do that, in fact. But what a lot of people do is precisely what you described, is like, once you get to the point where like your operation, expands into a different market, it does make a lot of sense because now you have a different sub account with a different login that you can still see from a bird's eye view from the primary account. You can see kind of what that other person's doing, the reporting and everything like that. But in terms of like the conversation management, it's a different unified dashboard experience, and that's important because like you kind of maintain like your operations separate, and you can see like how are my operations in the Florida market like stacking up with my Ohio like campaigns, right? And kind of just compare apples to oranges and see like, okay, like is this a successful market expansion for me because I've been able to achieve similar results that I did in Florida.
Yeah, and the ability to have reporting in one place. I run them side by side. Florida is super competitive market, so the response rates I'm seeing here definitely are less than other markets, but that's because of how competitive it is, right? Any market you go to that's competitive or less competitive, you'll see that. And I think the ability to run and understand the KPIs, I've been having a lot more appreciation for the reporting side of things, right? And I actually have spoke with Igor, one of your employees, and I talked to him about that changes that are coming to reporting and how like it's going to be done a little bit even different, right? I think it's useful now, but I think it will be even more useful in the future, right? And that's the kind of good thing. So when it comes to the dialer, I have saw the presentation, I have saw the demo, and I really like a couple of the features, right? So, and I kind of want to mention to you things that I think are really great, and you kind of tell me, do you think there are going to be more features like that, right? So for example, when you are dialing, right, you have 5 phone numbers on the left side showing that, hey, this phone number has been dialed, they didn't answer. This phone number has been dialed, they didn't answer. So it actually in real time shows you which phone numbers you're dialing and which answers you're getting, right? So I think that kind of prepares VA instead of just sitting there in the dark, just being like, I don't know, so they're dialing, I guess, but I'm just here waiting for the phone call. So I think that is the visualization of that is important. They get bored while waiting for a phone call sometimes, what I mean? So like, I just feel like it just keeps things more active. So I think that's a great feature that you guys added. Can you tell me a little bit more about some features that may be coming in or, some of the things that you feel like the dialer Smarter Contact has created maybe makes it stands out compared to some of the competitors?
I think to kind of like draw the picture, for people just to have context, back in 2022 when I like started doing these calling campaigns and kind of the primitive stages of the ideation, like, we were using like a manual dialer. It was a third-party solution. And like my people were their KPI was to dial 100 calls a day. And so 100 calls a day, and then, we moved on to a power dialer, and then their KPI became 400 calls a day. And they were using a third-party single line dialer. And that means that like, say you have a spreadsheet of 100 contacts, it dials one contact at a time, it goes down the list. And it dials at one time and it goes all the way down to the list until it's completed, right? I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way, because like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make the numbers work, if I'm just having these guys only dial 400 calls in an 8-hour shift
for sure
every single day, because you like the only way you scale then is like more human power, like human capital, right? You hire more, you scale out your team, which, there's a lot of like hidden costs, right? Like training people like continually in order to retain them. I mean, like the ramp up period for them to achieve proficiency, there's a lot of costs associated with that, right?
Yeah.
But I really focused on enabling the team that I already have to be able to do more with the same amount of time, right? So with our dialer, what it does is it dials like a minimum of 5 different lines simultaneously, so in batches of 5 at a time. And it not only dials the 5 lines at the same time, but it also double dials those lines. The reason why that's important, first, from an operational standpoint, we're speaking sheerly about calling volume. And now my guys are doing like 1,000 calls, 1,000 unique contacts, 1,000 unique contacts every single day in an 8-hour shift. So they go from doing 400 single dial, like single dialing 400 contacts in 8 hours, to now double dialing 1,000 contacts in 8 hours. So that's 150% increase in calling proficiency, in calling efficiency. And so you can imagine, they can get for a lot more contacts. Basically, the same hire does 150% more volume than they typically would have done in the past. And the software double dials because, you guys probably, it's happened. I mean, I know maybe it has happened to you, Rolf, but if somebody calls you more than once, you're kind of more likely subconsciously to respond because you kind of figure it's like, oh, maybe this is an important call. Like maybe this is something that I know, or maybe like you accidentally hung up or something like that, right? There's a lot of different instances, but the software automatically does that. And one of the things that is neat as it's doing that in the back end, it's also suppressing like answering machines, voicemails, right? Like it's automatically hanging up all these calls as to speed the progression of the campaign, right? And so you can kind of visually see all these different cues, like when a call has been disconnected, you can see a red dot. When it's connected, you can see a green dot, right? And so once the call is connected out of the batch of 5 calls, it just kind of hangs up all the other calls. And in the rare instances where 2 people might respond at the same time out of the first batch of 5, and you're connected to 2 calls simultaneously, the software, once you resume that campaign, is going to go back and redial that person that you hung up on, just because you were on the other line, essentially, on a different call. So it's smart enough to kind of just do that rotation by itself.
That is huge, because I think especially the fact that you can double call someone, like you said, I've personally fallen to that myself, right? So whenever I get a call, because one time I remember, years ago, I applied for a business loan, and I probably since that was probably 3 years ago, I'm still getting calls from guys offering me business loans, right? So, and the hilarious part is that I already kind of know not to answer most of the time, but sometimes one of them guys calls me 2 times and he does catch me. And so I see how that could be beneficial. People think, oh, if it's a spam, they will only call me once. Oh, like you said, maybe I accidentally hung up on them. There's got to be an emergency. Why would someone call me twice? Right? If you get a call from your wife calling you once and then she hangs up and she doesn't call you again, I'm like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't that important. But if she calls you 2 times in a row, you're kind of like, all right, well, I got to answer because I don't know what's going on. Why should call me twice, right? So I think that's a very fair point. And I think that just that little tweak in the system, right, can bring big results. And that's kind of the other thing that I want to talk to you about, results. I know you kind of had this platform rolled out for about a month, right? So the dialer rolled out for about a month. I wanted to know on the back end of things, what kind of results are you seeing people are getting in the dialer? So I kind of wanted to see if you can go over that with me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, to the general public, it's been released on beta for the last month, but we did test it internally for months before then. And so, the reason why is that we drink our own Kool-Aid, right? Like we internally heavily use our software, like both on the texting side of things. Our teams sends like over 500,000 text messages a month. And the calling volume, it's about the same, right? So we do use the software ourselves, and so we were able to get some really good results. In fact, when I did the release, like showed people, and I did the standard disclaimers, like, look, I don't guarantee you're going to get these results. Our team is very well trained. We have good standard operating procedures, but this is what you could get, right? And so, because my team was getting like average like response rates of 10.5%, and relative to what they were able to get in other third-party solutions, that was high. In fact, if you guys search the average response rate for calls, like specifically cold calls, it's going to be like 2%, 2% is very low. And so for my team to get 10.5%, I'm like, oh, like, maybe we just have like really good data, right? That it's verified and all that. And then on top of that, like the conversion rate is like, I have some of the guys that had, 5.82%, 3.72%, right? So like in the range of 4 to 6% conversion rate. And that means like out of the conversations, the people that responded, those that actually became leads, right? After they've done kind of like the qualification and whatnot. And so I thought that was like pretty good. But then now a month in, January was the first year where like all the early adopters have used the software at scale, and now we've logged hundreds of thousands of calls, many more hundreds of thousands of calling minutes. The average response rate is still 10.5%. So I was like, wow, like that's pretty impressive. And so I think it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just a testament of the technology that really works on your behalf in order to maximize those connections. And it really all starts with those response rates, right? Like the more people that you can get on the phone call, like subsequently, the more people that you can have conversations with, the more people that you're going to end up qualifying and scheduling meetings for, and so forth and so forth.
And that's impressive because that's almost a response rate that you would get in a very competitive market that you're texting in. That's almost as good as that 10.5%. If you're texting in a super competitive market, it's kind of, maybe obviously you're getting more, but it's pretty close. And that's for cold calling. A cold calling is a lot less of a response. You get a lot less response rate than you do with texting. Going back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? If you want to contact more people and get more responses, you're texting rather than cold calling, right? So
there's also the people that are leveraging like in a different way, like I described earlier, is if you're doing like a calling campaign right after the texting campaign, like say you run a campaign like 1 week, 3 days, right? The 75% of people that didn't respond, you immediately do a calling campaign thereafter. Like those people are also gonna respond. Like they're more likely to respond, right? Like they see the association of the phone number, and I really encourage that because the call doesn't feel so much as a cold call, and it's very easy to break the ice, right? Because you can say like, hey, like I've been texting you for the last couple of days and I didn't reach you at the right time. How's your day going so far, right? And then immediately is like, what? You've been texting me? I'm sorry, like, I must have not seen him. I was busy. Maybe you weren't texting me on the same time. I apologize. Like that's people's natural reaction. Because a lot of people don't text, right? Like before they call, basically. People typically text after they call to confirm an appointment, right? This kind of stuff. But like to text before calling, not a lot of people are doing that. So when you create that relevancy, people typically respond a lot better than just calling them as a first step.
I know what people do till this point. People have been doing with like mailers, right? People send mailers and then they call and say, hey, I sent you that mail. Did you get it? Right. So it's the same idea. And I think that is absolutely great. I think I actually used that script 2 years ago when I didn't know if we texted, because again, I was just kind of like uploaded this to texting, uploaded this cold calling, and and I'm like, well, I assumed it probably would have got a message, but like we've got called out so many times of being like, no, I never got a message from you. And when you are actually in one platform that you can see, because I'm assuming with the dialer, you can see that can you kind of see like easily the texting conversation you might have had with the same number, or how does it work? So like that's also a good point. That's because you can use that when you're talking to the seller.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, so you can see the conversation log, right? Whether it's text messages or inbound and outbound calls, like it's all logged in the message thread, right? So you can see when was the last time, that timestamp, right? The specific day and time of when that person was last engaged, whether it's an inbound call, outbound call, or text messaging conversation. And that's very important outside of the fact that you can add customized notes to that contact record as well. I mean, and you can also go into the info session. I mean, you can one click an icon to go to the Zillow listing, right? You would have the address of the person and all that context, the specs of that property, a link to Zillow, a link to Google Maps if you're doing land to see the exact location of that lot. And it's all built into the software.
That's awesome. I think that, like I said, I think that is a game changer, because if somebody calls you out like, hey, I don't think I got a text, you can be like, well, I texted you on the 4th of this month at 10 a.m. and because you can see that log. So I think that is absolutely great. I think that, again, that creates more credibility. The biggest challenge when you're doing this cold calling is have the ability to create fast credibility on the phone, right? Create fast, like you said, break the ice of being like, hey, I texted you before.
Yeah. The accessibility is very important, right? So like, if you're taking calls on your on your personal call, on your personal phone, like you don't have access to that contact record, like the prior engagement, like the contact notes, all the contact record, right? But like if you're receiving the call, or you're making that call, you can immediately say like, hey, like I sent you a mail a couple weeks ago, but I never heard back from you, right? And it's like, oh, you sent me a mail, like I didn't seek any. Well, is your property this and this and this, right? You read off the record, it's like, well, I'm sorry, Is just to verify, just to confirm, is your property this, right?
Yeah.
And that's like a way to really verify ownership and ensure that you're talking to the right person, aka the decision maker, the one that can actually make the decision to sell the property. And so, you can use the same approach if you're doing like driving for dollars, right? And it's like, hey, like I drove by your house last week, and you weren't, you knocked on your door and you weren't there, right? Like that's a great icebreaker as well. I mean, not saying that you should be deceitful, but I'm just saying like, it's a good cadence, right? It's a good icebreaker to follow if you've done driving for dollars, even if it's virtually. You can say like, I've taken a look at your house, and thought I'd reach out, right? Well, people automatically are going to presume that you drove by, but in reality, I mean, like you just did the virtual driving for dollars, right, through Google Maps. So
when I was starting off, I didn't know. I was just hoping that anything works, right? So I would use that, and it was hilarious because multiple times I would use that on land, and I'll be like, hey, we were in the area, so you have a vacant lot. And it's funny because some of the data I had was older, so the guy would be like, well, if you drove by, you would have known that there's a house on it now. So I'll be like, oh, okay, sorry, I apologize. So so there's definitely, you can BS your way as much as you can, but there's definitely going to be people that will call you out. So the ability to actually have credibility to say like, hey, I did text you, here is the proof of it, I think that's a big deal. And and it seems like you guys have created a software that's going to make a lot of people stand out in a very competitive market, right? Wholesaling investing is competitive. It's been competitive, and it's staying competitive, even with the difficulties of different markets and lower, the kind of lower house values and some, challenges in the real estate market. I have seen that the wholesaling hasn't slowed down. Realistically, it hasn't really, there are some people that maybe left the industry, but overall, I would say it's been still competitive. So the ability to have a software that helps you stand out is a huge prop, because anything that makes you stand out, I believe, that can be your website, that can be how you dial, how you text, your all your processes. So super important. So I think that's awesome.
No, it's definitely, to your point, I mean, like it's definitely a competitive advantage, right? I mean, and I think, there's a misconception of people that, they think that, texting is like not done so much as it used to be, back a few years ago. And the reality is that, last year alone, we saw an increase of over 300% in the amount of text messages that were sent through our platform, right? So it's yes, it's not as easy as, like 2020 through 2022, where like a lot of people were getting into the business, and it was very easy to make money, quite frankly. Even if you got yourself into a bad deal, like the market would effectively bail you out. Like you held the property, like if your closing day was say 60 days out, right? Like you held the property under contract long enough, even if you got yourself into a bad deal where you came in at a higher number than you should have been to then be able to dispose of that deal and sell it on the back end. The appreciation of the market, specifically, I mean, like I'm out in Arizona, right? It was crazy, specifically markets like Scottsdale, Arizona. The market would bail you out, and then you would flip over that property and still make a good profit, right? But what we've seen is that the people that have remained and have remained consistently, right, being able to really dial in their processes and stuck with it, those are the people that are still around and are doing it at a much greater scale. And what's great about that is that it really just elevates the industry as a whole, because a lot of these guys also then teach other people, how to do it. So there is still a way forward, a way in if people are getting started. Would I suggest you go into Arizona because it's kind of like the mecca of wholesaling? No. Would I suggest go to Florida? No. But go into other smaller sub markets, line up a good buyer that's willing to buy your deals in a market that has 100,000 population or more, and then start there, and then go
Sure. Yeah, and I think like you said, I tell a lot of people, they're like, I have students that live somewhere, and they're like, I heard Florida is great, should I do it? I'm like, no, you definitely shouldn't. I mean, like, I think that if you know people here and direct buyers or whatever, if you have some kind of connection, I can see how that could make sense, right? But if you were starting off and you were going to start from the beginning, I was like, Tampa Bay market, not for you, right? Miami market, I don't suggest doing it. Like, it's going to take a lot longer to get to where we were talking about, right? And I think, again, that is the thing, is that you can test different markets when you have the ability to use different markets on your texting platform, right? You can have those sub accounts if you have the correct platform. And that's what I think I suggest to a lot of people to do, is that test different markets, see how the response rates are, and see how hot or cold people are. The way I test markets is that I do the most competitive list. Like, I do like a straight up prop shame vacant list. That is probably the most competitive texting list that you can get. And I test it. And if it does okay in the market, then I'm like, well, if this list did okay, then I can imagine how the more niche list would do.
That's a good approach. And to your point, like, there's so much opportunity out there. Like I call like the off market like the secondary market, right? Like it's either like properties are on market or off market. So think about the on market as being the primary market, the MLS, all the inventory that people see in Redfin. So all these different websites that just aggregate all this on market listings. But then the off market stuff is the secondary market, and that has really grown significantly. Over the years, there's more transactions and sheer volume of transactions, but also the amount, right? Like the dollar volume of transaction as well has increased significantly. And people, when people think about our solution too, oftentimes like people also think about just using it for off market, but the reality is that it also works for on market. In fact, I personally spoken to people, they're sending 100,000 plus messages, and all they do is like on market, because their whole approach is like, it's not about working directly with the seller. Like a lot of people are doing that, specifically in competitive markets. I'm going to go and work with the real estate agents that already have these seller representation listings on the market, and I'm going to reach out to them and try to get a deal done, right? As long as they get their commission, there's still at least a 3%, off the sales price that you can take for yourself for an assignment fee. And it's very powerful because obviously these people already, like these sellers are already, like they already have intent to sell, right?
Sure.
Specifically in the market conditions today, when you see that properties have stayed in the market for 90 days or more, like look at the average amount of days that a property is listed in your specific market. If it's above that average, then like that's a window of opportunity for you to reach out to the seller. It's like, hey, like can get you a buyer for that, right? And then you just syndicate that deal, get it under contract and get a buyer, and then make at least 3% off that deal. But what's powerful is the network effect of that, because now you have like a Rolodex of real estate agents that are in your market that are bringing you pocket listings, right? Like, and so now they're bringing you all these different listings before, from their sellers before they go on the market. They're bringing it to you and say like, hey, do you have a buyer for this, right? And now what you're doing is you're boxing out all the competition because you're being presented deals that are not readily available on market for just anybody, but they are on the back door just for you as a pocket listing.
For sure. And you can also use it for creative, right? You can be like, hey, I know you've been on the market. Would you consider subject to? Would you consider owner finance, right? And there's a lot of ways, like you said. I think Smarter Contact is, and any other platform, but I mean like PropStream or whatever it is, right? I think it's a tool, and how you use it is up to you. But I think a lot of times it's important to utilize tools that are catered to your industry and your needs, right? So because I before, I've looked into dialers, 2-3 years ago, whatever it was, and I was just like, oh well, this one is more for realtors, doesn't really have what I need. This one is more for B2B sales, right? So it doesn't really have what I need. So, and having a software that's catered to your needs is super important. So
people that just focus on the disposition as well, right? I mean, like some people don't focus on acquisition. Maybe some people just do straight up disposition. Maybe some people do both, but the platform can also be used for disposition, right? To the selling, you can very easily get a list of buyers, right? Like look at all the people that bought properties in cash, within the buy box that your inventory is in, right? That you operate in. You can skip trace a list of cash buyers, and boom, like you have a way to do a campaign to go ahead and sell that property. The more eyes you can get on that property, well, the more likely is that you can get a higher assignment fee for that, right? And so that really matters. If to be able to get a couple $1,000s extra for that deal that you already have under contract, is very powerful. So that's one of the ways that people also use our software.
Yeah, I actually haven't just used that. Like we said, I started the new sub account for New Market. I actually just texted all the LLCs that I thought were flippers, and out of the 300 people that were in my original list, I think I got 25 of them into my potential buyers list. So that's almost a 10% conversion rate, not on responses, but on conversion to add into your buyers list, right? So that is super powerful. I think it's a great way to use that. And like I said, it's a tool. Smarter Contact is a tool. It's just how you use it, right? There's different things, how you can use it for your benefit. And I think one of the things that I want to talk about is pricing, right? So we're kind of talking. I know that it's a beta right now, beta testing, but I mean, I guess it's rolled out. But you have the first batch of people that have been signed up so far on to use the dialer, and I think it's $199 a month right now, as far as I remember. So can you tell me a little more? Will there be more plans available? Because I know Smarter Contact texting platform has very different variety of plans, which helps people decide what they want to do. Will kind of be the same way for the dialer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like what we've rolled out is, what we call an early bird plan, so to speak, right? It's an entry level plan, but it's really at its lowest price, than that it will ever be. And the reason is we really want people to use it, right? We really want people to integrate it into their business, and we're willing to really come in at a place where at a price that's very competitive, while still delivering a lot of value. I mean, like initially we thought like, hey, like let's only do a single line dialer, for the entry level plan. And I thought, man, like that would just be a disservice to people. I really want people to experience a multi-line dialer and to be able to dial at least 5 lines at a time, and double dial batches, right? Because I just know the how it would increase the operational efficiency for people. And we just didn't want to come up with something that was comparable to what was out there in the marketplace, right? So in the entry level plan itself, yes, that is something that you're able to do, to dial up to 5 lines, 5 contacts at the same time from 5 different phone numbers, and do that in batches of 5s, and it double dials, right? And you can dial up to 250 contacts within that plan. It is $199 a month. It is billed quarterly, so $597 is what gets you in the door. We've done quarterly. We've done quarterly subscriptions for a very long time. I mean, since early 2023. it's worked out great for us because people that do buy into it, they're committed, and you and I like know from having done this for a very long time, like it's not a realistic expectation for you to come in and say like, hey, I'm gonna just get a deal under contract and close and everything's gonna happen within 30 days, right? The reality is that you got to stick with it, right? You got to be consistent, and that's important, and 3 months, which is a quarter, it's kind of like the bare minimum really for you to be able to like, hey, like do your initial campaigns, negotiate something, put it under contract, and then, close. When we see a lot of people, like specifically the people that are experienced, that's a fair disclosure, right? Like if you're experienced and you've done this kind of thing, you already know how to close deals and everything else is taken care of. You have standard SOPs that you follow and are proven to work. You're going to get a lot more deals done in 3 months, right? But if you're getting off, if you're starting for the first time, then, maybe you close a deal, right? But the point being is that one deal, even on the low end, I know guys that do, land investing, land flipping, right? And their average assignment fee is not very high. Like in fact, I spoke to a gentleman that his average assignment fee was $4,000. I'm like, wow, like $4,000 is not a lot of money. But then he tells me like, well, for us, it's just a matter of volume. We're still doing 30 to 40 deals a month. And so like the guys, like the guys making $120,000 to $160,000, right? In assignment fees, but it's a matter of volume. Whereas, I have other guys like, for example, that are in Southern California and they're like, I don't touch anything that's not going to bring me at least a $25,000 assignment fee, right? So there's all a strategy to it, right? If you want a larger deal size, then you go for higher value properties, right? That there's skin in the game for you to take off, right? So like a $500,000 house, if you get a 3%, standard realtor commission, that's kind of what you want to get paid as an assignment fee. Well, that's $15,000, right? Are you going to make $50,000 assignment fee like doing deals in Missouri or Ohio? Like there's not enough skin in the game, right? So you kind of have to plan, accordingly. So
that's true. And there's definitely, when you say $4,000 fee, I'm like, that's a little low. But when you say 30 deals, changes the perspective completely, right? And I agree with that. Yeah, there's a lot of people that do it differently, and that's the beauty of this industry. I feel like is that you can do it the way you want to. There's so many ways to make money in real estate. One thing that I remember talking to someone about 2 years ago, and I started this business in 2020, so it's been 5 years this year that I've been in real estate. And about 2 years ago, people are like, well, is it time to branch out to other industries? I'm like, why? I was like, this real estate industry is so vast. There's so much I can do, from wholesaling to doing creative to being an agent, right? To flipping, to more buying multifamilies, commercial deals, whatever it is. There's so much to do that I don't think one lifetime is enough to do everything that you can do in this industry. So I said, why would I change something if I'm comfortable and I like this industry. I like what this provides.
And the issue is that like people just like put blinders on, like people just want to do the same thing over and over again on repeat. And like what I see is like a lot of people fail in the specific market conditions that we find ourselves today, is that they're just so infatuated in just finding these deals at 60, 70% ARV and be able to just do a traditional wholesale type of deal. And the reality is that there's only a finite amount of opportunities that you could do that, and get deals under contract at that level of a price, right? But in reality is like, because of everything that happened, between 2020 and 2022 and the massive acceleration and appreciation of properties, like it's just created like a buyer that is a lot more aware, right? Like people's sense of awareness and price consciousness is much, much higher. And this was proliferated really by the mainstream media, like talking about how prices, like have just soared incredibly, right? And so like people just know like how to access that information. But that doesn't mean that like you should never, I love the guys that tell me is like, hey Josh, like I'll never lose a deal based on price. And what they mean by that is like price is not the only thing that makes up a deal. It's like they'll say like I'll buy anything for just about any price as long as I get my terms, right? And so what I mean is like there's always a creative way to structure the terms to where it's favorable, and then the price doesn't matter, right? It's like if somebody wants to sell or finance something and it's, it could be 10, 20% over current retail value. But then you say like, hey, like if you seller finance to me over 30 years at 0% interest, I'll buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you're going to
exactly.
pay more than 20% over the span of 30 years. Obviously, that's a very like dramatic, kind of like black and white example. But hopefully you guys, you guys get the idea. But there's always a way to creatively structure the deal. And so what we see is like people that have multiple exit strategies under their belt, right? And they're like looking at seller finance, subject to novation agreements are super hot right now. Like all these different exit strategies, not just straight up wholesaling a deal for a fat assignment fee, are just having more success because they look at everything as an opportunity, even if it's just an agent referral, right? Like tell you, I'm going to get a finder's fee or something like that to refer, like a referral fee to shoot this opportunity over to this agent, for this, because the seller is only interested in just going and listing on the on market to get top dollar that way.
That's what makes you from a real estate wholesaler or investor into a real estate professional. There's two different things, right? So I think being a real estate professional really sets you apart, especially in today's market, 100%. And well, I think that I am very excited, and I kind of mentioned in the beginning of the video that we'll be giving away the 1 month free for someone who signs up for 3 months for Smart Contact Dialer by using the promo that we're going to be providing, which I think is an absolutely great way to start. Like you said, 3 months is super necessary. I think that to even assess a product, you cannot assess it properly in a month, right? How are you going to know if any of the deals you call this month are going to close? Because it takes cultivation. There's very rarely that you call someone and they're like, I want to sell today. Like, most of the time it's like, oh, well, let me talk to my wife. Let me see, let me think about it, and obviously there's super motivated people, but those people also have, 10,000 people that also call them, right? So it's kind of the situation of cultivating those relationships. So I think 3 months is a great time, just a great amount of time. So I do appreciate you to providing that opportunity to the viewers to sign up for the platform and have that 3 month to test it out, and having 1 month free is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what should we make the coupon code? We haven't really talked about this. Something super easy for people to redeem.
Dial something with a dial. I'm not very creative, so I don't know how.
Well, I was thinking just to use like your name. It's like super easy.
Yeah, hey, that works too. Yeah, that works.
Let's use Rolf.
Rolf, yeah, that works too. That's perfect.
You put it on the screen, RAUPH. That's how you spell it, guys. Yes, and what I like to do as well, I know that we talked about just like the coupon code being usable for the dialer, but I really think, as we talked, it would really be a disservice to people that to just do that for the dialer alone and not for the messaging plan. So I want to also extend that coupon. It will also work. I'll make sure it works for the messaging plans as well. That's what I'm saying. So they can use it for either product. It doesn't matter if it's a messaging plan or flagship product to do the texting campaigns, or you want to use it for the dialer. It will work for either plan, for any plan, and it will be $200 off. So I know if you go into the starter plan, that's 1 month free. But if you go into some of the other higher end plans, maybe you use a competitor solution and you want to give us a try, then it's going to be less than a month free, but it's going to be $200 off, right? So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's awesome. And I always, I have the privilege to, speak with you and just kind of, pick your brain and also understand how this will work. But I think when I was starting off, nothing was given to me for free, that's for sure. So the ability to provide this to people that are starting up, or they are, have a limited budget that they, you can't test something if you are in a limited budget. It's harder to test another platform because then you still have to pay for the one you have and have to do that, right? So I think having that ability is awesome. I think it's anyone that's looking to just explore it and to even give you guys a shot if they haven't yet, if they haven't used even the texting yet. I think it's a great way to start.
Speaking about a great way to start, like whenever I want to get to an end result, to an outcome, whenever I want to achieve something, I always look at the people that have gone before me, right? The people that have already been there. And so like my encouragement is to your viewers is to tag along, your journey, right? And like, heed your advice to, follow you, like buy your course, buy your program, whatever it is that you come out with or currently have. It's like you want to be under the mentorship of somebody that has been there before, right? Because Rolf is like super generous with all the information that he shares with everybody here on the YouTube channel, but trust me, there's a lot more value behind, closed doors, right? And there's a lot of mistakes that, he can help you avoid, and that, quite frankly, it costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and paying for somebody to mentor you along the way. It really pays dividends, over time, and it's going to be the greatest investment that you do.
One of the things, the reason why I actually do have a Udemy course, right? And when I created it, my original idea was to guide people, because when I was starting off from nothing and with no guidance. And my guidance was YouTube videos, and YouTube videos are good, but everyone has their own opinion. This way, this guy has this way of doing things, this guy has this way of doing things. And it's like you're trying to kind of combine these things and learn from everyone. And it's really hard. So if you like a person that you like how they do business and how they're presenting the information, I always suggest, like, hey, pick a person. It could be me. I'm grateful if it is. If it's not, it's okay as well. But I'm saying, like, pick a person and follow exactly their steps, like you're saying, right? Because then you will learn that way. You're not going to conflict your brain between, like, oh, well, this person is doing this way, well, this person is doing it, because it's an easy concept business, but I think it's a tougher business than some people think. So the last thing you want is being confused of where to start and what to do, right?
I like the blinders, because like when horses go to race, like they put blinders on, like just like this, right? And so the reason why is so they're not distracted by anything, by the horse next to them or anything that happens, right? They're just looking forward and pressing forward. And so one sure path to success is to take massive action, but also to just like, look, this is like, put your blinders on. This is the way that ponies become stallions, right? And eventually are able to race with everybody else. Is you got to put the blinders on and just keep pressing forward, and with the guidance of somebody that's been there before you and can mentor you along the way.
100%. I agree with you there. I really appreciate you coming by today. It's been, I think, very informative. I think a lot of people, I'm very confident they took away a lot of good things from this conversation. So I do really appreciate your time. I appreciate you stopping by, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback that, right, because I get feedback all the time on my Instagram, on my YouTube, like, hey, I checked it out, it's been cool, or people send me emails. So I'm very looking forward to hearing people's feedback from using the dialer and see how it goes. Josh, well, I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Thanks for having me. All the best. Cheers.
Bye.